Greetings, everyone, and thank you all for taking the time to join us for this year's ASPB Meet the President-elect Candidates event. In this online event, you will be able to ask questions and learn more about our candidates' plan for leading ASPB into the future. By getting involved in ASPB and voting in our elections, you are helping to shape the future of the society and the plant science community as a whole. We really appreciate you being here. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few technical details. If you are experiencing issues, let us know about those by using the chat box or by emailing me at shapeadia@aspb.org. Please note that we are recording this webinar and we plan to post the video within the next few days. Also, follow-up discussions and additional questions will be shared on our ASPB blog. If you have questions for our candidates, please add them to the questions and answer box. There is an option to upvote questions that other attendees have posted to indicate that you are also interested in hearing about a particular topic. I'd like to encourage you to use this feature as it helps our moderator determine which questions are of most interest to our audience. Daisiane Ferreira Neres is with us today to navigate your questions and to moderate our discussion. Daisiane is a PhD candidate in the Biological Systems Engineering Department at Virginia Tech University. She has recently joined the ASPB's Ambassador Alliance, where she hopes to be in close contact with the scientific community and to contribute to it. Thank you again for joining us, Daisiane. Daisiane, I'm going to hand it over to you now to start the discussion.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Jason, and thank you for the opportunity to be here. Thank you, everyone, for being here today and for joining us. As Jason shared, please post questions to the Q&A box so that I can prompt them to the candidates. I first want to start by briefly introducing the candidates. First, I want to introduce Leanne Thornton. Leanne Thornton is a professor of biology at the College of New Jersey and the director of the first-year seminar program. Our next candidate is Laura Wayne. Laura is an associate laureate and the oils discovery leader at Court of Agri-Science in Johnson, Iowa. Before we begin with the Q&A questions, I want to invite our candidates to each share a brief opening statement. First, I'd like to invite Leanne Thornton.
Hi, everyone, and thank you. I'm Leanne Thornton. I have been in ASPB since 1998 when my undergraduate research mentor encouraged me to present at a regional meeting, and I was so scared. It was the first time that I'd presented off campus, and it was extremely nerve-wracking to stand up in front of other plant biologists, but it encouraged me to recognize the importance of this society in supporting young students like me all the way up through established professors and researchers in academia around the world. So I began to appreciate what a professional society was and what it meant and how that could be an important thread throughout my career as I developed. And it has been, and I'm very, very grateful for the mentors and the encouragement. And I've tried to give back over the years by helping with the resume reviews and mentoring and career counseling whenever I could share my experience to help another young scientist think about their path through plant biology and identify what was the best thing for them. So a little more about me. I am at a primarily undergraduate institution in central New Jersey, and that means that we don't have any PhD candidates. It's very rare to have a postdoc working here, although one of my colleagues just got funding for a postdoc. I work very closely with undergrads. I teach, but I'm not just a teacher. I am a plant scientist, and my identity as a plant scientist has informed everything I do, from the way that I mentor students to become scientists to the way that I design my classes. And even in the last few years of coordinating the first-year seminar program, my dedication to helping people become informed citizens has expanded, and thinking about how to get young college students to engage with scientific thinking, critical thinking, and to recognize that plants influence so many aspects of our lives. And so it is very important to me that ASPB continues to do education and outreach and public awareness campaigns to support plant biology broadly, and to think about those things. The last thing that I want to say is thinking about how I have learned about the functioning of ASPB over the years. I was a postdoc member of the membership committee and saw the beginnings of the ambassador program and how much that has grown since the early 2000s and what ASPB has been able to do with engaging young people in leadership. I came back to the membership committee in 2012 and then again in 2015, and I helped to grow the awareness of the PUI faculty position as plant biologists in the society and the networking that we needed and the connections that we needed to the society. And through that, we were able to establish the PUI section of ASPB. And this has given me a chance to work closely with the leadership and see how all the committees work together. And I didn't realize how much other people don't know about the workings of ASPB until you get involved in a leadership position. And so part of what I am committed to is continuing the efforts in the recent years to be transparent in what we do and how we make decisions, and to listen carefully to all the various members and try to ask hard questions about which members' voices are not being heard and how can we best support the broad and very diverse membership of ASPB, and how can we grow the membership of ASPB to include people who feel that they may not have seen themselves or been represented, but yet they do identify as loving plant science and wanting to be involved in the plant science community. And I'll stop there.
Thank you, Leon. And now our final president-elect candidate, Laura Wayne.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. So I first joined ASPB back in 2005 when I was an undergraduate at the SUNY College of Environmental Science and Forestry in New York. And I had the opportunity to do a summer undergraduate research fellowship, the SURF Award I received that year, where I had a chance to do research in a lab, and then go the following year to the ASPB meeting and present my research. And with that SURF Award, I received a complimentary one-year membership to ASPB, which I continued to renew as an undergraduate as well as a graduate student, and I've continued to renew my membership to this day. And that SURF Award really kind of changed the trajectory of my career. It really gave me the confidence that I could do research in plant science, and really motivated me to continue to graduate school and study plant science. So I really credit that SURF Award with getting me on this track of being involved in ASPB. And when I joined Corteva AgriScience back in 2012, I wanted to give back to ASPB, give back to the community. And so in around 2014, I joined the Women in Plant Biology Committee. And through that committee, we've had hosted webinars and workshops. And one of the things that I'm most proud of being part of the Women in Plant Biology Committee is starting the Plantae Mentoring Center that's on Plantae right now. So you can join and become a mentor. And I've really enjoyed having mentees and mentoring people in ASPB and talking with students and encouraging them to continue their career in plant science. Through being on the chair of the Women in Plant Biology Committee, I was then on the council where Leanne and I met, and we overlapped for a year on the council. So that was nice getting to know Leanne. I also was then elected to the board of directors to represent the council for 1 year. So in 2020, I was on the board of directors. Since then, I've rotated off the council and the Women in Plant Biology Committee. In the past year, I've been involved with the Centennial Challenge Committee. So we're trying to raise money for ASPB for the 2024 centennial. And just to talk a little bit about my research and what I do at Corteva, I am in the output traits group and trait discovery, where we're trying to develop products that consumers are focused on. So think about oil and protein and healthy foods. My research is focused on gene discovery, trying to identify new gene targets and traits to improve the seed composition, so oil quality and overall seed quality. So I'm very much in tune with basic science. I'm reading the literature, going to conferences like ASPB, keeping very in touch with the basic science research, and then looking at how we can take that basic research and apply it. And so it's that interface between basic and applied research is where I'm most excited. And my interest is really in developing products for people that can help provide, the food, the fiber, the feed to help our growing population. And so as president of ASPB, I will want to listen to you and what you want out of ASPB. I think that's the most important part is listening, and also giving everyone in ASPB a voice. No matter what institution you're from, no matter what career stage you're at, we're here to listen to you. So thank you.
Thank you, Laura. For a kickoff of our Q&A, I would first like to start by asking the first question, and we'll ask Leanne to respond first. What do you think are the biggest challenges that ASPB and the plant biology community will face over the next 10 years? And how will you, as a president, work to make sure ASPB is poised to face those challenges for the organization and for the community that it serves?
All right, thank you. So there's two things that I want to talk about. One of them is helping the public and policymakers understand the importance of plant biology research in addressing these huge climate change related issues with food security. This is a big deal, and I think that the ASPB membership internationally, there are some countries that are facing even worse problems than the United States, but there is no one around the world that hasn't felt some of the pressure of food insecurity that's coming from the challenges of raising plants for food. However, this problem of adequate nutrition around the world is going to depend on collaboration between many different kinds of experts. We as plant biology researchers are not going to solve the problem, because we need to also communicate and work with policymakers and economics experts and many different types of stakeholders in this issue. And I think that ASPB has an important role in bringing people together and helping people to think broadly and creatively and to hear from many different kinds of voices of how to address this issue. One of the things that I've seen as an example, I really like what the Cornell Alliance for Science and the Boyce Thompson Institute are doing to promote ideas and communication and training for this global effort of food security, and how can plant research innovations be applied to this issue. And I'd like to investigate, as president, I'd like to investigate how can ASPB expand, broaden, be involved in, support that kind of effort so that our voice worldwide can make a difference as we think about this huge issue of food insecurity. The second thing that I wanted to think about or mention briefly is community building. Community building is extremely important to me, because I think that all of us thrive when we feel that we have our people and we are recognized and respected. Community building for our current and new members is an ongoing challenge. Membership has been declining for several years in professional societies. And so ASPB needs to face this issue of how can we provide resources, support, inroads for different people to engage in the society in the ways that are appropriate for them. there's so many things that are stressing us out and tearing us apart. There's disease, heat waves, floods, economic issues, and lots of political turmoil. And it's making it very stressful to do our jobs. We're all working under pressures that we've never really experienced before. And I think that ASPB is a really important conduit for us to find support. And the more that we can do to make it easy for people to connect and access other plant biologists to feel that they are heard and supported is really important. I've appreciated the community building activities that have come from what we had to do during the pandemic, such as networking events through Zoom that have happened throughout the year. And there's been several groups that have picked those up and continued them in the last couple of years so that we don't just connect with our people at the annual meeting. And I think that that's also, it's important that we've figured out how to use technology because it's allowed international members who can't afford to go to the annual conference, ways to connect with plant biologists and feel support and find the mentors that they need through these innovations and the technology that's allowed us to even do what we're doing today. So I want to communicate, I want to continue those things, and I want to really look carefully at what can we still do? Are we doing the right things? I'd like for us to assess who shows up, who doesn't show up, and how can we get people to engage in ASPB. But I also want to recognize the importance of supporting diversity in so many different ways. I love that ASPB has been a leader, is currently engaged in a huge effort with other plant biology societies to support diversity and the multifaceted identities that each of us brings. I really want to be part of ASPB's effort to look carefully at our policies, our statements, our structures, and our initiatives across the board and ask the question of who are we missing? Whose voice is not being amplified? How can we better provide mentoring and representation and examples so that plant biologists of all sorts see themselves in this society and value their ability to contribute to this society?
Laura, would you need to restate the question?
Yeah, sure. You can just restate it briefly.
Okay. The question was, what do you think are the biggest challenges that ASPB and the plant biology community will face over the next 10 years, and how you, as a president, will work to make sure ASPB is poised to face those challenges for the organization and for the community that it serves?
So in 2019, I had the opportunity to work with the Plant Science Research Network, and we put together a decadal vision for all of plant science for the next 10 years. And that is reimagining plant science for a healthy and sustainable future. This decadal vision outlined 8 priorities pertaining to research, people, and technology. ASPB, ASPB's challenges definitely need to fit within that decadal vision. All of our institutions should fit in within those goals and priorities for all of plant science. And so the four goals that pertain to research are harnessing plants for planetary resilience, ramping up sustainable production systems, addressing nutrition and health, and then developing data modeling tools to interpret the huge amounts of data that we're collecting. So those 4 are the kind of the main research goals and challenges that we face. So, as Leanne had mentioned, food security is definitely a part of that. Climate change is definitely a part of that. The other goals around people and technology are, creating a workplace and a work environment that is inclusive and welcoming to everyone, even people outside of plant science. And because we need all the help that we can get. We need to be working interdisciplinary with climatologists. We need to be working with, as Leanne mentioned, policy regulators, people around the world, to really solve these big challenges for not just all of plant science, but really, humanity, in solving these, these grand challenges. The two goals about data and technology, we're collecting huge amounts of data, and being able to analyze all of those data and interpret those data is going to be one of the big challenges, not just for plant science, but for all of the sciences in general. Is having those data analytic tools is also really important. And so these challenges, I think that we're gonna have to come together. We're gonna have to work with people outside of plant science, working with people in the medical field of coming up with new medicines, and producing vaccines in plants are all some of these things that can really encourage and make plant science exciting and get more people involved in plant science as they see how it directly affects their own lives and their health. So I think ASPB's challenges, are definitely going to fit within these goals and priorities. As my institution does, and I'm sure all of your institutions fit within these challenges.
Thank you both. We have a question from the audience, so that's the next one. For this question, I would like to ask Laura to respond first. The question is, what are your means and methods to bring about changes in the system of ASPB? In other words, how do you push your agenda when there is either resistance or apathy at the higher up level or the community in general?
So pushing change and being a provocateur is one of my expertise. So back in 2018, I actually had run for president of ASPB and lost the election. But with that, I had already set out some priorities that I wanted to accomplish. Even though I was not elected president of ASPB, I still worked very closely with ASPB in trying to move some of those priorities forward. So one of the priorities that I was able to move forward, even though I was not president or in a leadership role at ASPB, was getting the students and early career representation on all committees. Including the council and the nominations committee. That's something that I'm really glad to see that through, and see that we now have representation from early career people at all on all of the committees. And they have, they're an active full member of those committees with full voting capacity. I think other challenges that we need to do to really kind of change the system, change the culture is sharing our stories, being personal and sharing our personal story, making the research that we do personal and relatable to people, especially people outside of science. So communicating with scientists or with non-scientists through storytelling, I think is very important, because the more relatable you are to someone else, the more willing they're going to be able to listen and understand what you're trying to say. And I think also listening, being an active listener, is really part of those good communication tools. And just being persistent, showing rather than telling. All of those tools are really good at helping to drive change.
Leon, would you like the question restated, or are you good?
Sure, go ahead.
What are your means and methods to bring about changes in the system of ASPB? In other words, how do you push your agenda when there is either resistance or apathy at the higher up level or the community in general?
Thanks. So the way that I bring about change and would continue to work as a leader is that I don't presume that I can do it by myself. The best example of that is when I was on the membership committee starting in 2012. I was appointed to that position to be a voice for the primarily undergraduate institution faculty members who are in ASPB. And I recognized that one voice and one advocate was not enough. And so I made it a point to, at every conference and through any aspects of my network that I could advocate or that I could activate, to hear what other people wanted. What was it like at their institution? What was it like to be a plant biologist working in the system that they did? And I did not presume to understand that my experience and my perspective was the only one. And so, for example, after a year or so in that position, I made sure to invite a few people that I knew were PUI plant biologists to a dinner together and said, let's talk about the future of PUI plant biologists in this society. What do we need? What's the best thing for us? How can we continue to grow our connections and help our type of career and our type of plant biologists feel connected to the society and the broader goals and initiatives, because I care deeply about what ASPB does. And I had seen that a lot of PUI plant biologists feel isolated as plant biologists because they're at institutions that don't necessarily have other plant biologists. And so it seemed like a really important way to engage and bring them together through the society and through some larger effort than just one time a year. If you can make it to the annual meeting, come to our morning networking session. So that dinner led to conversations and more extensive ideas, and a phrase that I often got teased for later because perhaps I used it too many times is that many hands make light work. And that was very, very important to me in bringing together people who had talents and time and figuring out how could we use the resources that we had. And part of this question included when there is apathy or when there is resistance. And I think this example is really important because usually when there's a good idea or there's something that's useful for some aspect of the membership or of the society, then there's more than one person who cares, and there's more than one person who's interested, and that by listening to what they bring and why they care and why it's important, we can kind of winnow down to what is the best iteration of what it is that we need to advocate for, the change that we need to make, or the initiative that we need to champion, and how can we get it to appeal most broadly and get over that inertia of, yes, we all have too many things to do. And yes, we are spread very, very thin. And this society is made up of a lot of dedicated, but very, very far extended people who want to do the best in their job and with their outside of job life and through the work that they do in the society. So I will just say that my leadership style is to listen, to bring together different voices, and to not presume that my understanding of the situation is complete, and I need to hear from other people and activate the talents and resources that other people bring to the question.
Thank you both. Our next question is, what impacts do you expect ASPB to have on plant science and plant scientists over the next 5 years? And for this one, I will start with Leanne. You're muted.
Got it. This question feels to me very similar to the previous question, and thinking about the biggest challenges and priorities. So some of what I have to say about this is connected to that. I do expect ASPB to continue to help bring plant biologists together, help them feel connected, and help them feel that their work matters. The things that we do in the questions that we're asking, the particular type of science that we're doing, whether it be large data sets or whether it be crop plants that we're working on or model plants that we're working on, I think that all of that needs to come under the bigger structure that ASPB brings in thinking about the big questions and the decadal visions that have been put together by ASPB over the the past years are very important, because it's the great thinkers in plant biology coming together and looking at the challenges that we face as scientists and the challenges that our world faces, the challenges that plant biology can answer. And so the biggest strength and the biggest way that ASPB can continue to make a difference in this field is by bringing together a lot of diverse voices. And I think that we are on the right trajectory, and I want to strengthen and continue the things that we do to bring all of those voices together to continue to improve awareness for plant biology, to help people outside of our society recognize that plant biology and plant research is critical to the strength of humanity on this planet. And that connects to how I think that this society is so important in not just supporting the researchers, the ones of us that are doing the science, and the education of those that are coming along to, become the future problem solvers of the world. But we also need to keep enhancing our efforts for public awareness and really, really expanding this issue of how many people are apathetic about plants, don't recognize this plant awareness disparity problem. ASPB has a really important role in that. For example, the things that we do with K-12 educators and the booths that ASPB has at the teacher conferences, those things are really critical in helping the youngest people of not the society with a capital letter, but broader society to appreciate asking scientific questions with plants and learning about plant biology. I think that in the next 5 years, we have to continue to get plant awareness out in every aspect that we can, whether that be through engagement at the K-12 level or helping graduate students, postdocs, professors to be able to talk about and explain their research in a publicly accessible way.
Thank you, Leanne. Laura, do you need the question raised?
No, I can jump right in. So I just want to echo, everything that Leanne said. I completely agree. Either way, ASPB is making significant strides to shift leadership to people representing either PUI or industry, and deviating kind of from the R1 university leadership. And so both Leanne or I, we're definitely going to be there to help welcome people from all career levels and institutions, especially undergraduates and people who choose non-academic careers. The past few years, ASPB has been really actively working to bring equity, diversity, inclusion from just a committee to embedding it into every aspect of the organization. So ID&E is becoming more than just that one committee. It's incorporating into every discussion, activity, event that ASPB is planning. There's the new NSF grant that ASPB is involved in, the Roots and Shoots grant, which I think is going to be an excellent resource for highlighting and representing all of the different types of activities and directions that we should and can go in. I think all of us in ASPB, each and every one of us, should be vocal and activist about equity, diversity, inclusion. We all can be activists. We all should be accomplices in really trying to drive a change and making our society more welcoming to everyone, including talking to the general public, making science and plant science accessible and communicated in a way that is understood to people outside of scientists. So a lot of our communication is generally inward facing to future careers and people moving up moving through their career through graduate school and becoming postdocs and into their own career as a plant scientist. But I think we also have an opportunity to use and highlight some of the research that we do and communicating that more outwardly towards the general public. So communicating the science research that we do, whether it's Taproot or the Taproot podcast or the hashtag We Are ASPB, and really sharing our stories in a way that is understood by people outside of science, I think will really help encourage and motivate people to understand what plant science is, the impact plant science has on everyone's lives. It's the food that we eat, it's the medicine that we take. It's definitely important for everyone, and I don't know if everyone actually understands that. So I think that'll help gain public support for plant science, which is really what we need moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. We have another question from the audience, and I will start with Laura this time. The question is, what is your one major goal if you are selected as president-elect? I mean, the one plan change that you will try your best to implement.
So I think transparency is a path towards equity. I really believe that ASPB can be a more transparent society, and it really drives that equity by being transparent. We're showing, uncovering the details that people might not know about, and I think transparency, we can do a much better job at that. I know there was the Transparency Project in 2020 that Judy Callis had started. I'd like to try to continue that. As when I was chair of the Women in Plant Biology Committee, I made sure to include summaries of our meetings on Plantae. I think they're starting, the other committees are starting to do that, but really encourage the other committees as well as the council to be more transparent. I mean, as Leanne said, a lot of our members don't really understand how ASPB works. And I think understanding how ASPB works will encourage more people to become involved and participate in ASPB. So I know the nominations process was just revised and made more transparent. So I applaud ASPB for doing that. I think that is a big help. One additional area I'd like to see more transparency in is the financial aspect of ASPB. So I know Clara, the CFO of ASPB, and her team has done a tremendous job of making ASPB's finances and good accounting practices, and getting those updated and improved. And I think now the next step is communicating that to our membership, because people are more willing to donate and participate in ASPB if they understand where their money and their actions are being put towards. So as part of the Centennial Challenge, we are trying to raise money for ASPB, but knowing where and how that money is going to be used and what programs that's going to be used, I think is very important. So as president, that's one of the specific areas that I would like to really continue and work towards.
Thank you, Laura. Leanne, do you need the question restated?
No, it's fine. Thank you. And it's difficult to not repeat what Laura already said, but the word that came to mind when the question first popped up is engagement. And so I would like to increase engagement of more people that identify with the plant biology community. And as Laura said, one way to do that is if people better understand how the society works and they can see a place for them to join and engage. But I also think that there's a lot of potential to leverage what we've learned in the past couple of years about how to lower barriers to engagement. Prior to the pandemic, the biggest thing that we did was our annual meeting, and that is an amazing way to get all jazzed up about plant biology and to feel like you're doing something really big and that you're part of this bigger worldwide endeavor to bring about innovations through plant biology research. However, in the past couple of years, we've seen that when that wasn't possible, we do still have a lot to offer. And the virtual conference showed us that people can engage from all over the world when we have some of the technology that we've done. I will not forget sitting in a workshop with someone who had stayed in her lab all night because she was on the other side of the world, but she really wanted to engage in the interactive aspects of our workshop, not just watching the talks online during her normal daytime. So it was the middle of the night for her, and she was listening and working attentively to benefit from the opportunity to talk to other plant biologists. So I would like to see some clear upticks in the way that people engage. And I recognize that our traditional membership structure is not necessarily the right fit for a lot of people who identify as plant biologists. And so I would like to see our tracking, how people engage in the things that we do, how people are responding, and through smaller ways to donate. So as Laura mentioned, there are several initiatives going on to raise money for ASPB that are not through the normal membership dues. And I think that's really important because I think that some people might recognize that this podcast that they love listening to, that gives them lots to think about as a plant scientist, and giving a few dollars as a way of donating and supporting the effort and initiative is what's appropriate for their budget and their ability. I also think that money is not everything. We are run by volunteers, and some people may be able to give to the society through their time and effort and attention that they don't have financial resources to give at the moment. And I think that tracking and considering engagement through all of those different avenues, not just who signs the membership line and pays the membership dues, but the many variety of ways that people can engage with our society. That's my big goal and what I would like to advocate for and see some tangible change over the next few years.
Thank you, Leon. For the next question, I will be starting with Leon again. The question is, ASPB is arguably over-dependent on journal-derived income streams. In what other ways do you think the society should fund its activities?
So we've talked about that a little bit already, but to expand on that some more, I do want to mention and reiterate that ASPB has been successful in getting conference grants and large research coordination network grants from the US federal funding agencies. And I think it's really important that we maintain those connections and continue to look for opportunities to fund our initiatives that are in line with what the federal funding agencies are supporting. And that is to the benefit of plant biology research, as well as plant scientists as a community. For example, when I was on the membership committee, and recognizing that one advocate for the PUI plant scientist wasn't enough, we started debating various ways that we could increase participation. And one of the biggest things that came up was that a lot of PUI plant scientists can't afford to get to the annual conference. And so our answer to that question was that Crispin and I wrote a grant, and we got funding to pay for travel awards to get more PUI plant scientists to the annual meeting and support a longer extensive workshop and more than just a little bit of networking, but really delving into what do PUI plant scientists need to thrive. And each year since then, we have carefully thought about what questions or problems or how can we improve our careers as PUI plant scientists, and how can we develop ourselves as professionals, and how can that workshop help us? And so getting federal funding has been important for that. And then the more recent research coordination network that ASPB has been involved in, the Root plus Shoot endeavor to, it stands for Rooting Out Oppression Together and Sharing Our Outcomes Transparently. This is an example of a huge grant that is bringing ASPB together with other plant biology societies to really do the work of thinking about our biases, our structures, our systems that are not making it easy for marginalized people to thrive as plant scientists, and how can we root those out, talk about them, find ways to correct some of those wrongs so that we can broaden engagement in plant biology and better support people whose voices have not been amplified as much as they should. And the other thing related to income revenue and supporting the society is what I mentioned a few minutes ago, is that, not everybody is able to be a dues paying member, but many people want to give. So I would like to see that our community building efforts and activities can increase opportunities for people to make charitable donations. Maybe for some people, membership is not as much as they would like to give. And so there are people who would love to support the society in a larger way than what the membership dues are. And so recognizing that variation within our society, that some members are financially not able to make the membership payments and want to give in smaller amounts, and that still helps the society, and other members are in a place in their career that larger gifts are very important to supporting the endeavors of ASPB. And I want to help the society continue exploring those revenue streams and opportunities for support.
Thank you, Leon.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything that Leon just said. Having different revenue streams is definitely helpful for ASPB, so not just relying on our journal income. So as I had mentioned, I am a member of the Centennial Challenge Committee, where we're trying to raise money for ASPB's 2024 centennial. So we hope to raise $3 million by 2024. And I believe we're just over halfway to this goal. Amazingly, majority of these contributions that have come actually from individuals. And so that's, it's really our members that are driving the Centennial Challenge. So ASPB is a 501c3. We can make it easier for people to donate. We're working on trying to update our website, having various links and different ways to actually donate. So you don't have to pull out a checkbook. You can use whatever the newest wire transfer money system is, and making those smaller donations. Every dollar matters and it helps. So no matter what people's capacity is to donate or to volunteer is definitely welcome. So thank you to everyone who has donated. I think we can also reach out to private institutions and organizations. I'm at Corteva. I've been talking with my leaders about trying to make a donation to ASPB. One thing we can also think about as we're thinking about private private donations is we could even have a membership category for institutions, so a blanket kind of membership category where it's reoccurring, so it's a reoccurring revenue stream. So we have individual membership levels, but we don't currently have a membership level for in industry or a private institution. So I think that could be also one way to get at that reoccurring revenue stream. I'd also, as I mentioned, like to see more transparency with our finances, because people are more likely to and willing to donate if they know exactly how and where their money is going to be used. So I think Claire's done an excellent job in getting our accounting into good accounting practices. So the next step is letting this be known, letting ASPB or letting the members of ASPB know how our finances and how we're doing. I think will really help drive those donations. As Leanne mentioned, there's also public funding and grants that we can apply for. We've got that Roots and Shoots NSF grant. We can also try applying for like an NSF REU style grant to help fund our summer undergraduate research fellowships. I think that's a really important way of getting more funding for student research programs and opportunities for students to get involved in research and plant science. So yeah, I think we just need to be creative on where and how we generate and think about revenue. Because yes, it is more than just our journals.
Thank you both. For the next question, I will start with you, Laura. The question is, what do you see as the roles of scientific societies in the digital age?
So as Leanne had mentioned at the beginning, ASPB, is really about community. I mean, we are a community of plant scientists, and that's the biggest, I think, thing that we have to offer our members is that sense of community. Community is more important than ever. The need for community is much more important, I think, now than it was in previous years. Between internet connectivity and social media and the pandemic, our sense of community has changed. We're now more physically isolated than ever before. There's, people are working remotely more often. We've got the online meetings. Those have provided more accessibility for people, getting people to letting people work from home who may not be able to go into work. Providing that flexibility with childcare as well. And people can't travel outside of their country or even outside of their city. Having those online meetings definitely increases the accessibility. But the always connected, always online, always feeling the need to work has definitely added startling amounts of stress and anxiety and mental health. And I think ASPB, they can help bring us together. They can help address some of these issues. I just want everyone to know that, you are not alone. We can face these issues together. You have a community to rely on. There's people that are going through the same situations that you are in the same field. They may be just in a different house, in a different apartment. And, we can really provide that community and tackle these issues together.
Thanks. As Laura said, community is so important in what ASPB does. And that's something that has come up in several of these questions. And we keep reiterating. The few things that I have to add is just what I mentioned earlier of how the barriers can be lowered with some of the digital things that we have developed. I think it's really important that ASPB help people feel their sense of community and connection throughout the year, not just at the annual meeting. And as I mentioned before, the engagement through webinars and online conferences and the various things we've been able to do are important. However, I will make it very clear that it is in human nature to want to be with like-minded people. And there is something about being physically in the same room with people who care about the same professional questions that you're asking, are curious about the same kinds of plant biology related ideas as you. There is something very, very powerful about that. And so return to in-person engagement in whatever way we can is important. And one of the things that ASPB does that is really important is the regional meetings. And so I want to make it clear that you don't just have to go to the annual meeting to get that in-person support and the engagement with other people that are like-minded and in caring about plant biology, that we have regional meetings. The Midwest and the Western meeting includes scientists from Canada. We have a Mexico section. I think that there could be a little more engagement internationally with ASPB members finding each other and supporting each other outside of the US. But these opportunities to engage, and there's, as Laura said, there's so many ways that we can work, and we can work at home, and we can work in our car, we can work on the plane. But being able to occasionally set aside all of that and be in the room and fully immersed in thinking about plant biology is important too. And so I would like for ASPB, through the digital age and all that we do, to still support scientists coming together to talk about what they care about.
Thanks, Leon. We have one more question from the audience, and we're gonna end with that. It's gonna be our last question. The question is, in near future, do you vision ASPB to go more global or local? If you are given choice to focus resources, would you prefer to reach member societies all over the world or provide better support to members and programs in the US? I will start with Leon.
That's a really difficult choice because I would like to say both and. We need both of those things to happen. However, you know, we do have a huge chunk of our membership. I think one of the numbers I saw recently was about 40% of our members reside outside of the US, which is tremendous. And so we don't have a lot of ways for international members to engage, except for what's happened in the past couple of years. And the fact that international members have been able to come together, even to participate in something like this webinar through the digital resources that we have available. So the questioner is asking to make a choice. I guess considering the many regional activities that ASPB does support and the structures that we have in place, we could do more globally, knowing that we have some local strength already in place and we could engage more globally. And if we do engage our international scientists, it does open up opportunities for collaborations and spending some effort and attention on our global presence and being engaged in global plant biology questions is only going to strengthen what we do in the United States as far as students asking questions that have relevance to the big global issues, people finding collaborators to solve these problems through the experts in other countries and what we're doing in the US. So my answer to the question is that we should put some effort in expanding our awareness, our presence, our effort to engage on the global level, because that does trickle back and connect to the things that we're doing already at home.
So to jump in on that, I completely agree with what Leanne said. 40% of our members are outside of the US. Yes, I think, we do need to pay attention to our membership outside of the US and make sure that we are representing them and providing resources and programming for them. We do have a international committee. We also have the Enid McRabi Corresponding Membership Award. We have a Mexico section, and Canada was recently added, incorporated into the Western section. So I think we have good representation on the council and our membership groups for people outside of the US, but we definitely can do a better job in serving our international members. We have, hosted conferences outside of the US, but those are still in North America. And, we've partnered with societies like the Canadian Society of Plant Biologists. Locations, having a conference in a location like Hawaii definitely draws in more people from, Asia and the South Pacific. But perhaps, having, an annual meeting outside of North America could help serve those members that may not have an opportunity to travel overseas. With some of our NSF grants, like the current one that we have with the Roots and Shoots grant, so that is, focused on programming for the US, since it's funded by the National Science Foundation. However, some of those key learnings, we definitely can apply to, our international members and international issues. And I think, as we become more of a global society in a global digitally connected world, it's definitely important to stay connected and support our plant scientists around the world. Things like, we saw with the COVID-19 pandemic, it took a world of scientists coming together to really solve that big issue and tackle that as quickly as possible. And with some of these big issues facing plant biology like food security, climate change, sustainable production systems, those issues are going to take a global community of plant biologists to solve. And so we definitely need to be all working together.
Thank you both. It was a pleasure to be part of this and very inspiring. I will now turn the floor back to Jason to wrap up the event. Jason?
Yes, thank you to our president-elect candidates, Laura and Leanne, and a special thank you to our event moderator, Daciani. Also, a big thank you to all our attendees for joining and for being so involved and passionate about what we do. We will be posting this recording and we'll be continuing conversation on our ASPB blog. I want to encourage you to keep this conversation going, and I look forward to working with all of you in the future, and best of luck to all our candidates this year. To all our ASPB members, be sure to cast your vote by July 20th. If you are not a member yet, join today at aspb.org/membership. Again, thank you everybody and have a great week. Hopefully we'll see you all very soon. Thanks everyone.